For world-class cycling is always Europe in April, May, because the World Cup Classics are fought out in very close proximity to one another. The queen of them all is, of course, Paris-Roubaix. We still say Paris-Roubaix because that's where the race first started in the late 1800s, but nowadays it starts in the town of Compiègne, some 50 miles to the north of the capital of France. It invariably provides a great battle as it twists and turns around northern France, searching out those cobblestones that we always call the hell of the north.
Canyon hasn't done any of the work, and yet despite that, the four riders covered the first 2 hours of riding. They covered 58 miles, and if they keep that sort of schedule up, then they're going to get down to Roubaix in record time. Here's the main field, 2 minutes 25 seconds back, and the pressure now going on, because the riders always feel when they get to this part of the race, although there's still 68 miles to go, once they get to the forest of Arenberg, decisions have to be made. That is Van Poppel in the lead, and Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle is trying to go across the gap to him. This is Eddie Senior. He was in the chase group that was trying to make contact, and joining two at the back there is Taffy, and number 28 going through. Well, that is in fact Ludwig Williams. So Williams has come up to this group. He wasn't in the initial chase. So that is the MG Maleficio team rider, Williams, as we go out to the end now of the forest of Arenberg. The crowd here at its thickest, the simple reason being, once they've seen Paris-Roubaix go through the end of the forest, their cars park nearby, they're onto the nearby autoroute, and they'll be able to rejoin the race further along, and they'll get there a lot quicker than the riders, because if you look at the map for Paris-Roubaix these days, starting at Compiègne, about 50 miles north of Paris, in fact then goes on a very circuitous route, making its way up to Roubaix. It certainly doesn't go in a straight line. There is the peloton passing through the forest. One or two riders now having to hang on at the rear. There's still a very big field here. Sean Kelly has already experienced problems, by the way. He's had one puncture and he's come back up to the field. So too is another winner for Paris-Roubaix, Eric van der Aarde. He's back up to the bunch, but they've both been involved in chases. Down the line here, Greg LeMond is very close to the front of this peloton, and so too I can see also there the sunglasses on the eyes of Olaf Ludwig, the Olympic champion, and of course this is Olympic year in Barcelona. Ludwig, now a professional rider, going to be defending the title he won in Seoul 4 years ago. But you know, the gap is coming down. It's now 31 seconds, and Leger is telling Duclos-Lassalle, and I'm sure that's not the news he wants to hear, because he knows the strength of Ludwig, he knows the pure speed and class of that rider, and the way Ludwig is pulling back Duclos-Lassalle right now, you know, they could come together at the entry to the velodrome, and they could go onto the track together. It's as close as that. The crowds now are shouting for Duclos-Lassalle because they know, thanks to television and radio, which is live throughout the afternoon, they know exactly what this man has done to get him here in the lead in Paris-Roubaix. He's not somebody coming out of the far distance and they say, oh look, it's a Frenchman. They know exactly what he's done to get here, and they appreciate the effort. There's Ludwig, and he's just going down the same corner which we've just seen, in fact, Duclos-Lassalle go down, so I would say now we're inside 30 seconds, and Ludwig is coming back. Olaf Ludwig, and there's a car up the road there, but I don't think it's behind Duclos-Lassalle. He's a bit further than that, but he's going to see, there's the helicopter you see above our picture there. Well, that is where Duclos-Lassalle is. The other helicopter now flying over Olaf Ludwig, and the main field behind, I think it's safe to say, are out of it. Le Monde has done his job well there. There's just one rider escaped the pack, Olaf Ludwig, and he's got a real chance now of pulling back Duclos-Lassalle. France versus Germany, and the 90th Paris-Roubaix is going to be remembered as a great event, whoever wins it.
The World Cup races roll to a temporary halt in mid-April. They make way for the big national tours, the Tour of Spain, the Tour of Italy, and of course the Tour de France, which was again a great race. It started in San Sebastian in Spain. And when I arrived there with Paul Schoen, my co-commentator, on the eve of the tour, we weren't too certain we were very welcome. This is what happened. An incendiary device was placed under the car by a Basque separatist, and as soon as it went on fire, it took out 6 other vehicles with it. So we'd lost our car before the tour started. But things got better, and as the race unfolded across 7 countries, it again produced its stars. None more so than that great cyclist from Italy, Claudio Kia Pucci. This is what he did on the mountains of the Alps on the road to Sestriere.
As we go up to the top of the climb now, the Col de Montcheny, and it's still the same man at the front. He's won every climb today in the Alps, and that is going to give him a near unassailable lead in the King of the Mountains competition. We come up towards the top of the climb. We've got Bunyo and Indurain now chasing them down. So the big names, it's been a struggle, but they've forced their way to the front here. 3 minutes and 33 seconds down on Claudio Kia Pucci. That's a long way. Kia Pucci is still the leader on the road, because this is a lot further back now to the climbing there of Lino. He's had a bad climb on Montcheny. Andy Hampson's had a much better climb. He's come right up to the fore here, goes over in 4th place. With him is Franco Vona. They are just over 4 minutes down on Claudio Kia Pucci. And so they're chasing now down the other side of the climb of the Montcheny. And if you look up the road, down there below us, and it is the world champion in the slipstream of Miguel Indurain. And the Maillot Jaune, by the way, Lino, is 5.5 minutes down on Kia Pucci, and that will keep him out of the yellow jersey. Kia Pucci could be in yellow tonight. The man he's got to worry about, and indeed the man who's worried about him, is Miguel Indurain. He is now trying to chase down Claudio Kia Pucci, and that is going to be some chase. They've been joined there, so it looks as though Bunyo, Indurain, Hampson and Vona have got themselves together. Oh dear me, look at the face now of Claudio Kia Pucci, because he's on the last climb. This is the climb up to Sestriere itself. Surely he's not going to crack now. This has been an escape of magnitude. Some 190 kilometers in the lead so far for Claudio Kia Pucci. And this will go in the history books as one of the escapes of any Tour de France in modern times. Indurain knows it too. And this is the first time we've seen Indurain come out in this race and have to take on the racing himself and not rely on his team to close this race down. The only time that Indurain has really put his own effort into this race has been in the first time trial at Luxembourg. He built himself such a comfortable lead there. He hasn't really had a chance or wanted to do anything so far, but now he knows if he's going to save this Tour de France, he's got to stop Kia Pucci, and he's got to stop him today. So Indurain, Bunyo alongside, and Bunyo will be content to see Indurain spend his energy now, maybe to find chance to attack him tomorrow on the long road to Alpe d'Huez, where he's won for the last 2 years, and indeed the only Italian ever to win, apart from Fausto Coppi, way back in 1952. Well, the crowd have been watching this on television, and they've been watching this rider out in front for 4 hours today. They've been watching him come slowly towards them, and Kia Pucci now surely can't lose this stage. And Bunyo's in trouble. Well, look at this. There's been an acceleration on the front. It was Franco Vona who's turned the screw a little tighter. And this has caused Bunyo to be in a spot of trouble. And I'm sure that Indurain has noted that. Well, he hasn't done a lot. He's tried to follow Indurain, and he's still lost ground here. So Bunyo will be very, very unhappy with his form so far in this year's Tour de France. Long, steady climb. This brings them up to the top of the Sestriere. Big crowd are waiting too, and Hampson is also in trouble here. Andy Hampson has tailed off. He falls back here to Miguel Indurain. Our camera's not allowed to go past these 2 riders by the international race referees, so we'll go back up and join Claudio Kia Pucci. The gap is still there. It's coming down. The start of this climb with 10 kilometers to go to the top, that's 6 miles. He was leading by 2 minutes and 20 seconds on those 4 riders we've just seen, but they've split up now. Franco Vona here also trying to have a little go. Cheers to Bunyo on the right of our picture there. Indurain trying to make his attempt here now to open up the gap. He's got to close this gap down. It's man on man now. Indurain isn't worried about his finish position today. He's more worried about the actual time gains of Claudio Kia Pucci, who could be heading for the Maillot Jaune right now, because Pascal Lino is in terrible trouble and losing a lot of time today. The yellow jersey could be the return now after this marvellous ride by Claudio Kia Pucci. Will go down as one of the finest escapes I've ever seen in any of 20 Tours de France, and the Italians know it too. They're trying to coax, pull and drag their man home in Italy. The Tour de France very rarely makes an incursion into Italy, and surely now they're not going to allow Claudio Kia Pucci to lose not just the stage win, but the manner in which he has won this race. He's not been afraid of anybody in this year's Tour. He's attacked the minute this stage has started. I can't believe when he attacked at the beginning of today's stage of 254 kilometres, he really expected to be in this position now coming up to the finish. Look at this crowd. And even the motorbikes are in the way now, and this is really unfortunate because you lose your rhythm. And actually, Kia Pucci just asking the crowd to pull back, let him see the road to the finish, please, at Sestriere.
Now, that's 1992, but let's have a look back at some of my favourite moments now of the Tours de France, and indeed the single-day classics of years gone by. All of these tapes are still available, and the ones for the shelf, believe me. Let's have a look first of all at 1986, the great battle between Bernard Hinault, the 5 times winner at this point of the Tour de France, and the man trying to win it for the first time, Greg LeMond of the United States. This is on the climb of Alpe d'Huez, and the 2 top men are one-on-one. And LeMond, spending his first day in yellow, still did not know if he could trust his own teammate Bernard Hinault. And he was right. Hinault launched an attack immediately. LeMond was being forced on the defensive already. He was right to have sleepless nights, and he was possibly right to criticise Hinault. But then without Hinault, this Tour de France really would not have been great. With the yellow jersey of Greg LeMond right on his back wheel. And there's the kite flying in the sky today. It heralds the end of the Alps as well. And fittingly enough, the 2 best riders to pass through the Alps and the Pyrenees. Hinault first under it, Greg LeMond in yellow is second. And this is now coming towards the end of what has been a most memorable section in the Tour de France. The mountains again have produced the truth and produced 2 great men here. And Greg LeMond must be feeling now as though his Tour de France is coming a little bit closer.
It's amazing as well to see them, after all the rivalry that's been written about them in the press in the last few days, after Hinault's not going to help LeMond, LeMond's not going to help Hinault, to see them reunited in this day, well, it's been a fantastic day really for these 2 riders to go away and just stamp their authority all over this Tour de France.
Paul, this has been a Tour de France in the greatest tradition of the event. We thought these days had gone with the absence of Eddy Merckx, the man who won 5 times and always used to win so well, the absence of Jacques Anquetil, who in the late 50s and early 60s won the race 5 times. They used to destroy the field like no other riders could. But since then, the technology of cycling has become so fine down that riders snatch bikes, quick wheel changes, always meant to tell them time gaps. They have only really to ride the bike, and therefore are winning by seconds and not minutes. And yet here we are now in the most modern Tour of its time, and the 2 greatest riders have ripped the field apart, and an arm goes round, What has Greg LeMond said to Bernard? The smile, this is unbelievable. The top of one of the hardest climbs in the Tour de France, and these 2 men smile. LeMond is making this fall look like a club run now.
Oh, this is fantastic. All the way up this climb, it looks as if they've been out on a training ride together. And both of them, you can see how happy they are now that they're going to be first and second over the line here. This is absolutely incredible.
I'm going to ask Cathy LeMond to say something alongside me here. She can tell us what it's like now to see Bernard Hinault and Greg come up the mountain. Cathy?
It's fabulous. I'm glad to see they're such good friends still. You can tell.
What do you think Greg said to Bernard then?
You win.
Well, let's wait and see what Cathy LeMond says. Has he told Bernard?
Like this, watch. I knew it. All right.
All right, there we are. The first time I've ever seen it. 2 men coming up the Tour de France, and I'll do it together.
All right.
The cheers are enormous. And you can hear...
Well, of course, after that great victory by Greg LeMond back in 1986, we all know what happened after that. And Greg LeMond wasn't to appear in the Tour de France again until 1989. But what a race that turned out to be. With my co-commentator then for British television, it was Paul Sherwin. I remember commentating on the final time trial from Versailles through to the finish in Paris, and then breaking down in tears. And I said to Paul then, I said, you know, we should never commentate again. We've just witnessed and talked about the finest bike race we'll ever see. And it was a great race, and it's a great tape. Here's an extract from it from Versailles.
But maybe history will repeat itself. It was 200 years ago, during the French Revolution, that King Louis XVI was removed from his home, the gigantic palace of Versailles. The king was taken to Paris and was executed 3 years later. Is King Fignon also going to lose his crown? And the only man who can do it is Greg LeMond, and he certainly looks confident at the start in Versailles. If anything, Fignon seems overconfident. The ponytail Parisien can't even consider losing 50 seconds in 15 miles. For Delgado, the stage is a formality. He knows that he won't make 2.5 minutes up on Fignon, but he's proud that he's proven himself. To come back from 198th place in Luxembourg to 3rd in Paris has been a remarkable achievement. But Le Mans still has a 1 in 100 chance of winning this Tour. He's riding his aerodynamic bike, wearing his aero helmet, and using his narrow aero handlebars. And he says he feels strong. The timekeeper counts down the seconds. And Le Mans is away on this ultimate trip. Two minutes after his American rival, Laurent Fignon enters the starting house. He too has his aero bike, but no aero helmet and no aero bars. The countdown begins. And now Fignon is underway for this 27-minute ride to destiny. Le Mans is a pure picture of power, approaching 40 miles an hour on this opening stretch. On reaching the River Seine at 6 miles, Fignon is 18 seconds behind Le Mans, a loss of 3 seconds per mile. At this rate, he'll lose the stage by 45 seconds, but win the Tour by 5. Le Mans is relentless in his challenge, smoothly turning his biggest gear. Fignon, in contrast, is more erratic. He stands on his pedals in search of extra power, but he only breaks his rhythm. He's down 37 seconds, only 13 seconds left in hand, 4.7 miles to ride. Cathy Le Mans can't believe that the impossible is coming true. But there's her husband Greg. He's thundering down the Champs-Élysées, about to catch Delgado for 2 minutes. Greg Le Mans' time trial is over, a time of 26 minutes 57 seconds, a record speed of 34 miles an hour. Cathy and her father-in-law gasp in astonishment. Greg Le Mans celebrates in anticipation with his coach Otto Giacomet. And there is Fignon. Can he still hang on to his crown? He's across the line, and the clock shows a time of 27 minutes 55. He's 58 seconds slower than Le Mans. Fignon has lost the Tour de France by 8 seconds, the smallest margin in the history of the Tour. There's only pain and sorrow for Laurent Fignon. And tears and joy for Greg Le Mans. Delusion for France and delight for America.
Absolutely unbelievable. Greg Le Mans, back from his accident, was again the winner of the Tour de France. He had such a pull for this event. He'd now ridden it 4 times, he'd won it twice, he'd finished 2nd, and he'd finished 3rd. He was back again, of course, to defend the title in 1990, but there was a new name to take him on, Claudio Kia Pucci of Italy. This rider was not unknown in the world of cycling, but he also wasn't thought to be a great bike rider. He'd ridden the Tour before, he hadn't done well, and in his first 2 years as a professional, he hadn't won a single race. But on that very first day, he was in a breakaway that gained many minutes, and that shaped the Tour de France right up until the final weekend. It was a marvellous Tour de France. Greg LeMond, you somehow felt was going to win, but just how worried was he about Claudio Kia Pucci? Well, as you know, this year, Claudio Kia Pucci was a little better again. But let's have a look back now at life in the Pyrenees for the man in yellow. It wasn't Greg LeMond yet, it was Kia Pucci.
Kia Pucci, out in front since the start of the Aspin, still has Brunel and 3 other riders for company. But when you are the race leader, you tend to have to do all of the work, while Greg LeMond here and Pedro Delgado rely on their teammates to set the pace. Greg LeMond has chased for most of the day. He has now caught his quarry, the race leader, the Maillot Jaune, and he sits and watches him. The face of LeMond gives nothing away. It appears he's climbing very well indeed. Fabio Parra attacks on the right, and Greg LeMond is the first to react. Marino Lajaretta takes LeMond's wheel. Conti follows, and soon everybody has moved across the road. There's one man, though, who finds he can't. The yellow jersey of Claudio Kia Pucci is falling back. The gamble of the day appears now to have been the biggest mistake of the day. The crowd narrow the road down to just the width of a car, and Greg LeMond picks his way through and never once turns round to ask Indurain for help. To the final bend, and at last Miguel Indurain lines up for the finish. Greg LeMond is grateful for his back wheel, but not for long. Indurain applies the pressure, just enough to crack the world champion. Greg LeMond's pacemaking up the hill had been formidable, but Indurain now was thinking only of the stage victory. It reminded one a little bit of the battle between Greg LeMond and Laurent Fignon a year ago on top of the Col de Peyresourde and Super Bagnères. Then, of course, it was Fignon going clear. This time, it was Indurain. Round the final bend, the finish banner was in sight, and after 7 hours of riding at an incredible average speed of 39 kilometers an hour, the Spaniard Miguel Indurain wins this classic stage. Greg LeMond arrived just 6 seconds behind him. Had Greg LeMond taken the race lead? The clock was counting down. Claudio Kia Pucci was alone now. He'd been alone for most of the day, really, because nobody had been willing to help him. He sprinted up to the line with the clock still counting down, and when he crossed it, he'd kept his yellow jersey by just 5 seconds.
The great Kia Pucci was back. He was riding so well in the Pyrenees, so well in fact, he was to establish a race lead along with Miguel Indurain. It was a great battle on a great stage in the Pyrenees, and Kia Pucci was no fluke. He was going to end the Tour in 3rd place.
Claudio Kia Pucci climbing with a great rhythm. Behind him was Charlie Motte and the tall figure of Miguel Indurain, always following at this stage and watching for every move. He was now in his home area. He knew these roads so well. The big, tall, handsome Spaniard, though, was without his lieutenant, Pedro Delgado. He'd missed the move. Greg LeMond was here and riding extremely strongly, and so too was the other American, Andy Hampsten. Towards the top of the Tourmalet, Claudio Kia Pucci was still setting the pace. The yellow jersey was hanging on in there too. But Greg LeMond was beginning to show signs of tiredness. He'd tried to attack on the Tourmalet. It hadn't worked, and he'd fallen back. He'd been joined by the Italian, Roberto Conti. A little sprint, and over the top went Claudio Kia Pucci in 1st place, followed by Indurain and Andy Hampsten. Gianni Bugno checking over his shoulder there to see where the yellow jersey was. He was only a few seconds back. And so too indeed was Greg LeMond, 18 seconds back to be exact. The final kilometre, the red kite in the sky, and Miguel Indurain, as he so often does in the Pyrenees, was heading up towards the chance of a stage win. He's won twice in the Pyrenees before, in fact in nearby valleys. He wasn't going to win for a 3rd time, as Claudio Kia Pucci sprints ahead to take the victory by 1 second. Kia Pucci's first ever big stage win in a major stage race. He was absolutely delighted. Claudio Kia Pucci lost the Tour de France in the final time trial 1 year ago. He swore then he would learn how to ride alone against the watch, and he really did shock the stars when he recorded the best time at the first time check. Miguel Indurain's fine performance in this time trial now was no surprise, because after all, he'd won the first time trial of the Tour de France, which now seemed a long time ago, and it was almost 3 weeks. At the first check, though, Kia Pucci had been the fastest time, and Brugno and Indurain had gone through in exactly the same time, 26 minutes and 57 seconds. They were both 21 seconds slower than Kia Pucci. But whereas Kia Pucci slowed down, Indurain just kept his rhythm going. By the time he came to the finish, there was no doubt left, if there ever was, that Miguel Indurain was going to win this year's Tour de France. Gianni Brugno was gaining nothing, and in fact he was losing more time. 3 minutes 9 seconds behind at the start of this time trial. By the end of the day, Gianni Brugno will be now 3 minutes and 36 seconds behind. Miguel Indurain had chosen the 4 crucial stages of the Tour de France to strike, won both the time trials and finished second in the 2 serious mountain stages. He was the only rider to finish with a time inside 1 hour 12 minutes, 1 hour 11 minutes 45 seconds to be precise. He had won the time trial, and now he would win the Tour de France in Paris the next day.
Now, the Tour de France is the great stage race in the world, but that's been going only since the turn of the century, 1903. Before that, there were the place-to-place races, the classics, and the classics still exist. They're known as the monuments of the sport, and above all, there are 2 races which are the very, very big ones. The Paris-Roubaix of 1990, I think, will go down as one of the finest races in the history of the event. And the event that races over cobblestones has got plenty of history behind it too. Well, it was a battle between Eddie Planckaert and Steve Bauer. And when they both arrived on the track, you know, if I'd have been the referee, I'd have given a dead heat.
Speed of Bauer here now as he pounds that heavy gear over the cobbles. Very relaxed position for Eddie Planckaert too. Just sits there nicely on the top of the handlebars. Almost looks like he's on a Sunday run. Far more urgency in Steve Bauer on the far side. This is the approach to the stadium. We'll turn right shortly into the velodrome. And here we go. Planckaert is the first in. I beg your pardon. Planckaert the second in. Bauer is first in. The brakes are going on. It looks as though they want Planckaert in the front. They're slowing right down, and this is going to let Gaillon on, because I believe Gaillon has been joined by Wampers out of sight of our camera. So we've got 2 riders in a couple of seconds. That's all, a couple of seconds off our camera. And they're coming on very, very quickly indeed. Into the stadium, Steve Bauer brings Eddie Planckaert, and a big cheer goes up too, just behind Eddie Planckaert. Edwig van Hooijdonk, again, no Frenchman present at the moment as they come onto the track now, but already in the stadium just behind them we have Wampers, and there they are, right down on the inside. They're going to go straight through. This will be a stunning blow to Eddie Planckaert. He didn't expect to see anybody. Now he's seeing his teammate, and the winner a year ago, Jean-Marie Wampers, leading immediately. Planckaert takes his wheel, so Wampers is looking to lead out. Planckaert for the sprint. The bell and 1 lap to go. 5 riders fighting out now. The finish of Paris-Roubaix. Wampers looks content, even as last year's winner here, to help Eddie Planckaert take the sprint. Bauer is in the back of the group, but Van Hooijdonk goes for a long one. He's the least likely to win the sprint. Bauer gets his wheel, a good piece of riding by Steve Bauer. Planckaert tries to come on him too, but look at this ride now by Van Hooijdonk, goes high, opens the door to Steve Bauer. Bauer comes on the inside, and it looks as though Steve Bauer's going to get that first victory on the line. They are almost together, and you know Eddie Planckaert was right on him on the line. We'll have to look at that again, but there was nothing in it at all. Absolutely nothing in it. Here's the group sprint coming in. I know what my decision would be, a dead heat, and I think it would be the fairest result, but I'm sure they'll come up with the answer. Let's have one more look at it from this direction. Steve Bauer on the right at this stage was in the clear lead. I don't know where Eddie Planckaert found it from. I'm guessing his eyes were shut though, as he just lunged his bike in the line. Watch the white line. Oh, it's possible that Planckaert has shaded it. And in fact, they are saying that the victory has indeed gone to Eddie Planckaert. The scrummage is on here as the cameramen seek out the Belgian. He has finally won Paris-Roubaix in the 8th time, And there he is, Eddie Plankett, the winner of Paris-Roubaix in the closest finish in the history of cycling. The official verdict is 1 millimetre. And while we watch Eddie Plankett here, let me give you the complete result. A win for Eddie Plankett of Belgium for Panasonic. His time, 7 hours, 37 minutes and 2 seconds, beating Steve Bauer of Canada by a millimetre. And everybody's heart must go out to Steve Bauer from the 7-Eleven team.
You know what a gentleman Steve Bauer really is. He never argued that decision. He just walked out of the stadium with just the masseur to console him. Fancy losing Paris-Roubaix by a millimetre. Can you believe he slept that night in bed? I can't. Eddie Plankett was the winner, and he's a local boy because Belgium is just across the border from France in Roubaix, and everybody there was supporting the Belgian victory. Well, Steve Bauer has an affinity to Paris-Roubaix, and although 1991 won't be remembered for a good season for Steve Bauer, the 1991 Paris-Roubaix certainly will. He was in the result again. This time, though, he was being beaten by a lone French leader, Marc Madiot. The same Marc Madiot who almost picked up the World Championship later on in the year in Stuttgart.
This is back to the leaders now. This is Ballerini, and it looks as though there's been an attack here. Ballerini and John Tarlan are the two riders here at this group. We've gone back up, and we've missed, unfortunately, our French cameras have missed this breakaway. But a rider has jumped, and it must have been soon out of that far bend we saw. We're coming towards the end of zone number 2. Tarlan chasing. Ballerini is here. And we're off zone 2 now. The fact our cameraman is with the two leaders. No, he isn't. That's Wilfred Peters who's come through. I was about to say that it looks as though the group had split up, and it certainly has. There's one rider in the lead. And, you know, I think it's got to be Marc Madiot who's gone ahead, because Ballerini is chasing. Sergent is still off the back of this group. It is indeed Madiot. So Marc Madiot has attacked in exactly the same place where he attacked and won this race back in 1985. And I keep thinking now about the conversation with Christian Remer, who said that watch out for Marc today. He's got good form. He gave us some indication in last week's Tour of Flanders, in fact. He was in the lead group there, working hard in the break. Well, this is his 10th Paris-Roubaix, Madiot. He's still around 10 kilometres to go to the finish. It's quite possible now, because the whole field is spread-eagled over the road behind him. And now comes the moment of the jersey straightening, possibly the two-arm salute. Marc Madiot is back in the big time. And a great, great ride. And here's the chase, and this group has got rather big all of a sudden. This is Jean-Claude Pelotti leading them out. He's come from nowhere. Ballerini is up there as well. Wilfred Peters and Steve Bauer has latched onto this. 5 men down. Bauer must have caught this group in the last kilometre. We never knew that Bauer was chasing. He was on one of our pictures, and Bauer has got up for this group. Well, a second place for Steve Bauer wouldn't be a bad defence, would it? Jean-Claude Pelotti, the French sprinter, leading them out. Ballerini place at the moment. It looks as though we've got Wilfred Peters there in 3rd place. Steve Bauer going high on the banking. Bauer going high. Carlo Bowman's taking him on. Bauer on the shoulder now of Ballerini as Jean-Claude Pelotti. Bauer has gone into the slipstream of Ballerini. So Pelotti now coming round towards the finish. Another Frenchman in the fight yet again. Bauer poised to jump. Bauer goes now. A couple of lap riders on the inside who are a lap behind them. As they come onto the line now, Jean-Claude Pelotti. Bauer's on the left, Bowman's on the right, and Pelotti takes it. That is a French 1-2, and that's not been done since the Pelissier brothers did that back in 1921. And this is the winner, Marc Madiot of France, Jean-Claude Pelotti in 2nd place. And 3rd is the Belgian rider on the far right of our picture, Carlo Bowmans. And Steve Bauer, what a superb ride by Steve, contacting this group almost in the velodrome and getting the legs to get up for 4th place for the Motorola team.
So those are 2 years of Paris-Roubaix, both different races and both equally exciting in their own way. Further down in Belgium, you know, down in the Ardennes, it's the most beautiful part of the world to be. And it's there where they run Liège-Bastogne-Liège. And this is the oldest classic still running. And it's always a great race. It's one everybody wants to win. It's for a very different type of rider. It's for a rider who enjoys the hills, and they come thick and fast. And this year, one rider wanted to win it above all, Claude Quillion. He was wearing the colours of the champion of Belgium. But the great cyclist was about to retire from the sport. And being Belgian and coming from the area, because he's a Walloon-speaking Belgian, that means he speaks French rather than Flemish. Claudio Kia Pucci was really out for victory. But he found men on form he may have not have expected. Men like the Italian Moreno Argentin and the new leader of the World Cup, Rolf Sorensen.
And this is Argentin and Kia now. It's interesting to see that Argentin himself is setting the pace in pursuit of his own teammate. Now, I suspect this was the plan for Sorensen to go away and Argentin to use his strength to counter the move. And it looks as though Kia is going with him. And this is a superb piece of riding by Claudio Kia Pucci, because this is the one climb where you've got to start reducing the size of this breakaway. Kia Pucci is not the world's greatest sprint finisher, and he'll want to shed quite a few of these riders if he can. And this is a powerful piece of riding by Claudio Kia Pucci. Sorensen still clear by about 20 seconds. Kia Pucci towing along now. The one man he doesn't want, of course, Moreno Argentin. And this is going to put both Austria riders up front. And along with Claudio Kia Pucci, somebody else is trying to get across the gap there as well. Champion of Belgium really rising to the occasion today. He's saying his farewell to the Ardennes in the best possible manner. And this is further up. This is Rolf Sorensen in the lead. Still wondering why they haven't caught him yet. He's just kept the tempo going. Indurain has joined the other two. So this has split the breakaway now. Completely, in fact. 4 of the riders have gone forward. We've got 3 of them here. Sorensen is up ahead. This is the end of the steep part of the climb. We go round this bend and then there's a chance to settle in a little bit. Snip it up to a little higher gear. There we are, confirmation of the group chasing for Kia Pucci, Argentin, Indurain. And I look down the climb. There are the 4 chasers. So there are 2, there they are 2. There's 2 riders dropped off from the back of the remaining 6. Stephen Roach is in that chase group, so too is Eric Van Lanker, I saw. And the crowd appreciating good, honest effort here by the 3 leaders. Heading up towards the finish now. And you see the official car has gone through and he wants to pull out everybody behind. There they are, kicking them all out, because the group now is almost on their back wheel. It's about 10 seconds the gap between these 4 and the Roach group. So the chase after all these kilometers is now coming down to almost 8 men. Last little climb in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Van Lanker was alone when he came up that climb 1 year ago. Now he's in the group behind, because once they flick onto the road here, they'll see the finishing line. Sorensen in the lead, and it's Sorensen who's going to lead out now. Crick is going in the centre, and Argentin to our left is now giving everything he's got here. Indurain is out of it, but it looks like Argentin is going to take on Claudio Kia Pucci. This is an inspired sprint by Kia Pucci, but it's not good enough. Moreno Argentin, and a salute there too from his teammate Rolf Sorensen, and a congratulatory pat on the back from Claudio Kia Pucci. The same 1-2 that we had just a couple of days ago, and Moreno Argentin delighted. But what a superb ride by the champion of Belgium in his final Liège-Bastogne-Liège. You have to feel sorry for Claudio Kia Pucci today. They're the 2 boys who did it just right. Stephen Roach is in now. 10 seconds was the final gap for Stephen Roach, and he came in 8th place. That was a terrifically hard chase just after Latitude, wasn't it?
If some of the guys had maybe believed more in their chances, maybe we would have been able to get back.
Yeah.
But I don't think the lads really believe we could get.
Are we seeing the start of the form of 87?
I think it's I think I finished 8th today, I think, and 81 in my first year pro finished 8 as well. Maybe I have another 10 years to go, yes.
The second generation of Stephen Roach. Well done.
Second start.
Stephen Roach, what a nice man he is. And there's Moreno Argentin, who has become one of the champions of the Ardennes over the years now. This is his 4th Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
And if you're tired of hearing my voice by now, well, 2 of my favourite videotapes of all time are of a little bit earlier than when I was around as a commentator. In fact, I was doing my first Tour de France when these snatches came in the Tour of Italy. This was Stars and Water Carriers, and the other film is Sunday in Hell. It predicts the great performances of a very great cyclist, Eddy Merckx.
At the foot of Paganella, the second mountain of the day, the leading group is grown to 9 men. 5 of these are Spaniards. But now Mex takes over the command. Goes out in front, sets the tempo up. Now, on a new climb, it looks as though Merckx will force a decision. The pedals must be pushed to the limit if you're not to be left behind. Gimondi passes Fuente and takes over his place at Merckx's rear wheel. Battaglin, Lascano, Fuente, Zilioli, Goldos, Adja, Pesaradona. Mex churns on and on. That's his way of dealing with the climbs. He doesn't use Fuente's sudden accelerations. But he has a tough, uniform march rhythm that has the effect of slowly torturing the others. Gimondi keeps glued onto his rear wheel, but it's a murderous pace. The leading group is at breaking point. It's hard to keep up. Especially for the Spaniards, they're feeling the pinch. To increase the pace now, it's surely impossible, inhuman, for any other than Eddie Merckx. Merckx is 50 meters in front of Gimondi and Battaglin, and 100 meters in front of Fuente. Battaglin tries to take Gimondi by surprise. But it doesn't work. And Gimondi immediately rides up alongside his young rival. A little further back, Goldos and Fuente are fighting to limit their distance. Merckx continues on his own. He's playing his trump card, even though it's not really necessary.
The two Brooklyn attackers still have a slight advantage. It can't go on for long, because Merckx, as usual, has assumed the role all the others are eager to see him in, the lead position. Once in front, he heads the pursuit like a locomotive. It falls into place for de Vlaeminck. Merckx now has to ride after the breakaway, which de Vlaeminck has organized. Merckx is causing the group to string out. The new pack is about 40 strong, here where the paving stones of hell start again. Barely 2 hours of the race remain, and a more comprehensive sorting out is imminent. Soon the long column will be thinner. Another fall. The battle for a place is hard and dangerous on the sharp stones, where the speed is again fast and furious. And Poulidor is furious. He wants a wheel, and now. There's some very fast riding now. It's difficult just to keep position, to keep your rear wheel. Martens, De Meyer, Dirks, Godefroot, De Vlamingh and Merckx leading. Merckx attempts to break the others with his tremendous power. Walter Godefroot has taken the lead, and now it's his turn to force the pace so that it hurts. Godefroot, the former winner of Paris-Roubaix, seems in good form and is riding very well. With his smooth, powerful technique, he's a real expert in this terrain, and is not nicknamed the Bulldog of Flanders for nothing. And suddenly it happens. 4 men have broken away. Godefroot, De Meyer, De Vlamingh and Kuiper. De Vlamingh looks back and proceeds to increase the speed even more. Notice De Meyer tucked into De Vlamingh's slipstream. He's riding for himself now. The crash by his captain Martens has released him from all obligations. The remainder of the field are a couple of 100 yards behind. 2 men have separated themselves and are midway between it and the breakaways. They're the 2 Frenchmen, Poulidor and Donguillaume, desperately trying to include themselves in this undoubtedly decisive escape. De Vlamingh makes the tactical error of riding a long sprint from the leading position. Moser attacks from above, but he doesn't box in De Meyer, who slots in between them and rides a really explosive finale. First, Mark De Meyer. Second, Moser. Third, De Vlamingh. Eddy Merckx, inscrutable as ever. Roger De Vlamingh, disappointed and furious. Mark De Meyer, the happy winner. And that was Paris-Roubaix 1976. A great race with a surprise winner. A year with a very special character, Paris-Roubaix 1976, and it will be remembered as a race of fluctuating fortunes in the dust of the Enfer. In a week or so, the same cast will be assembled, the same actors. The riders, the journalists, the officials. The rivalry will continue, but few will have forgotten that Sunday in hell.
You know, for me, Eddy Merckx has been the greatest bike rider of all time. I was privileged to grow up with him as a racing cyclist when he was an amateur, and then as he became a professional, I was rather pleased I was just a journalist, because certainly I wouldn't have been very good racing alongside him. There's also one other video we have on stock here called A Course on Tet. It's a real nice insight, and it does give a lot of footage of Eddie Merckx. Some of the dialogue, a little bit in French, but believe me, you will understand the film and you will like the pictures.
Vueltas más la fracción donde ven ustedes a los señores jueces.
Until the next time when we meet, remember this: keep cycling and don't give up. The very best to you. Goodbye.